How many of these do you think are real landscapes? Actually, none of them. Every one of these photographs was created on the table in my dining room. I've started calling this project Glowscapes because these imagined landscapes seem to glow from within. This is also the latest project from my experimental photo lab, a place where I simply give myself permission to experiment. Sometimes the ideas fail completely, and sometimes they become something that I could never have imagined. I've been experimenting with glass in photography for almost 14 years now. It first started during my portrait photography days. I'd often hold a piece of glass, or sometimes a neutral density filter, in front of part of the lens, carefully reflecting pieces of the surrounding landscape back into the image. Sometimes it would be a sky, sometimes trees, or foliage. I loved the extra layer of mystery that it added. As my photography evolved, so did my experiments. More recently, I became fascinated by photographing flowers through reflective materials. Mirrors, foil, mylar, patterned glass, almost anything that distorted light in interesting ways. Some experiments worked beautifully, others not so much. The patterned glass was actually too patterned for the softer look that I was after, while something as unexpected as aloe vera spread across the glass created some wonderfully organic distortions that I'll definitely return to another day. At this point, I was still trying to photograph flowers. I had absolutely no intention of creating landscapes. One afternoon, I decided to place some flowers behind the distorted glass inside my light tent. As the patterned glass look was too distorted, I swapped in a few of my bottles and vases. Printed backdrops sat behind the setup, with a few lights adding a little sparkle. Then something unexpected happened. The images didn't work because of the flowers, but instead because of the backdrops. I stopped looking at the flowers and started looking at everything else. The flowers almost disappeared. Instead, I saw distant coastlines, calm lakes, mist rolling across water, tiny horizons. It genuinely felt as though these pieces of glass were creating places that didn't really exist. That single moment completely changed the direction of the project. The flowers quietly disappeared, and glowscapes began. Almost immediately, the photographs reminded me of the beautiful bottlescapes created by the very talented photographer Rachel McNulty. I've admired Rachel's work for years and would genuinely recommend looking it up if you haven't already. Recognising that similarity was actually important to me. I didn't want to recreate somebody else's work. Instead, I wanted to ask a different question. Where could my own experiments take me? That became the real purpose of this project. Not copying an idea, but using it as a starting point to discover my own visual language. Once the flowers had gone, the experiment became completely open-ended. Using my light tent helped soften the window light and reduced unwanted reflections. Then it became a process of constant exploration. Different bottles, different vases, different pieces of glass, different backdrops, tiny movements, tiny adjustments. Every single piece of glass created a different world. One old pale blue bottle quickly became my favourite because of the way its angular sides bent and layered the light. Curved glass produced soft rolling waves. Other bottles suggested distant horizons. Each experiment felt like opening another new door. Adding to the story, once I could create convincing horizons, I started wondering what else could exist inside these imaginary places. To create the illusion of the sun, I first placed a bright orange jug behind the glass. It worked surprisingly well. Eventually, I replaced it with circles cut from orange holographic film. Suddenly the landscapes had glowing sunrises. Simple pieces of foil became moons. Occasionally, light bouncing between the foil and the glass produced reflections that looked remarkably like waterfalls. Those accidental discoveries became one of my favourite moments. Once I realised I wasn't limited to seascapes, everything became more playful. Greens became aurora skies. Warm yellows suggested tropical oceans. Muted greys became deserts. Earthy colours hinted at rivers winding through the fields. Eventually I wondered, could these become canyons, volcanoes, completely imaginary worlds? I started painting my own abstract backdrops, creating loose washes of colour that could sit behind the glass. Some experiments failed completely. The volcanoes, not quite there yet. But the paintings helped create beautiful, glowing cloud formations that I could never have planned. The canyon scenes ended up with rivers running through them, like deep gorges. Even the failures seemed to point towards the next experiment. I've also started introducing coloured foil fabrics to soften transitions and create more intriguing colour shifts. The project seems to grow every time I sit down with it. Glowscapes is still in its infancy. I genuinely don't know where this project will end up, and perhaps that's exactly why I love it. What began as an experiment photographing flowers through glass slowly transformed into landscapes that don't exist. That's exactly what the experimental photo lab is all about. It's a place where ideas are allowed to evolve, where curiosity matters more than certainty, where failure isn't wasted time, it's often just the first step towards something totally unexpected. This project certainly wasn't planned. It quietly revealed itself while I was searching for something completely different. And I have a feeling it's only just getting started. I'd love to know where you would take this idea. If you had a few pieces of glass, some light and a camera, what imaginary world would you try to create?